Hi guys. So we're ready to look at section 1.3, which is titled Simple Random Sampling. So objective one is we want to be able to obtain a simple random sample, right? So in section 1.2, we looked at some observational studies, but also you want to note that observational studies can also be conducted by administering a survey. So after you've established your research objective. Next, you want to start thinking about what population that you're targeting before you administer that survey, right? If that's what you choose, what makes sense for your study. So we have a definition. So this should be random sampling. Right? So random sampling is the process of using chance to select individuals from a population to be included in the sample. Right, so an important part of that definition is the word chance. Right? So here's a quote from page 24 in the text. So it says, for the results of a survey to be reliable, the characteristics of the individuals in the sample must be representative of the characteristics of the individuals in the population. The key to obtaining a sample representative of a population is to let chance or randomness play a role in dictating which individuals are in the sample rather than convenience. If convenience is used to obtain a sample, the results of the survey are meaningless. Right? So, for example, if I were sending out a survey to Marian Tech students, something that would be convenient is if I only surveyed the students that I have in class, right? It's convenient because I see them, I have a lot of access to them and can maybe try to convince them we have a relationship to complete the survey, right? So it seems really easy and convenient for me. But that might not be real reliable because their characteristics might not match the entire population, right? Um, so, for example, let's say, like for example, this term I'm teaching primarily online, right? So students that don't like to take online courses wouldn't have a chance to be in the survey, right? So so those characteristics would be missing, right? So we want to have randomness or chance here to kind of pick who's in the study, right? And we're gonna look at this even more. So we have some bullet points here. Um, I think I didn't finish reading all of this, but an important note to mention is this bold, right? So if convenience is used to obtain a sample, the results of the survey are meaningless, right? So we don't want to use convenience. Um, and it's an important sentence. It's listed here again, right? So just wanted to make sure that's there. And the next bullet point is that simple random sampling is the most basic sample survey, right? So we'll look at some other sample surveys, but this is the most basic, so it's good to start with. So the next bullet point, we have some fill in the blanks here. So the number of individuals in the sample is always less than the number of individuals in the population. Right, so that's going to be true. Right, and then we have a definition here in this box for simple random sampling. So a sample of size little n from a population of size capital N is obtained through simple random sampling if every possible sample of size n has equally likely chance of occurring. The sample is then called a simple random sample, right? So a key there is that every possible of size n is equally likely chance of occurring, right? So we don't want a specific sample to have a higher chance of being n than something else, right? So, like for example, like if I only observe my students, then Marian text students that are not my students have no chance of occurring in the sample. So that's not a simple random sample, right? We want every person to have an equally likely chance of being in the sample, essentially, right? So then the next part are some steps for obtaining a simple random sample. And I just want to point something out as well, is notice that little n is the sample size, right? And capital N is the population size. Right? So a population of size n and a sample of size little n. So that's very typical notation, right? So if you ever see me use capital N or little n, that's typically what that's referring to, right? Your sample size or your population size. And we'll also see that in some formulas as well later on. All right, so the steps for obtaining a simple random sample. So number one, you want to obtain a frame that lists all individuals in the population of interest. You're going to number the individuals in the frame 1 to capital N, right? So you're assigning everyone a number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to until you have given everyone a number. And then so that last number is going to be capital N, right? Because you're essentially, when you assign those numbers, you're essentially counting how many things are in your population, right? And then from that, we want to use some type of random something to help us generate some random numbers, so we can randomly pick these individuals in the population to be in our sample. So we can use a random number table, graphing calculator, some type of statistical software to randomly generate these numbers. Right, so have some fill in the blanks here, some more terms. So a frame, so we heard that term in the first step. So a frame is a list of all individuals within the population, right? So that's what that frame was referring to. The next says, in a blank, an individual who is selected is removed from the population and cannot be chosen again, right? So that is called a sample without replacement. Oops. Right? So after someone's selected, we don't put them back in, right? And they can't be chosen again. So we're not replacing them, right? So sample without replacement. And then so in a blank, a selected individual was placed back into the population and could be chosen a second time. That is called a sample with replacement. Right? And we'll look at those terms a little bit more when we look at some probability aspects in a little more depth. So I have some examples to walk through, and we're going to obtain a simple random sample in a couple of different ways, right? So example 1, the scenarios that we have, the House of Representatives has 435 members. Part A, we want to explain how to conduct a simple random sample of 5 members to attend a presidential luncheon, right? So I think I'll type this. All right. So let me. Right. All right. So how we're gonna do this is we could say that we're gonna list all. Oops, hang on. That doesn't. Not showing up very dark. list all 435 members and assign each member a number between 1 to 435. Right, remember this was that first step, right? And then we will use a random number table or technology to choose 5 random numbers between 1 and 435, right? So that's essentially what we're doing, what we'll be doing. All right, so part B then, we want to find a simple random sample of 5 members using the random number table below. And we're told where to start. So start in row 3, column 6, and proceed downward, right? So I'm telling you where to start so we end up with the same numbers, right? But essentially, like if you look at like some of the homework problems, that starting point should be picked randomly. So in like the homework problems, it might say something like the professor or the researcher like randomly placed their pen, and that's kind of where where their pen landed, right, on the paper, if you will, right? So we're just kind of randomly picking a spot, and we chose to start. Oops, I don't know why that moved. All right. Right, so we kind of randomly picking start in row 3. So here's row 3 in the random number table, and column 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this number is where we're starting, right? But something you want to keep in mind is we're looking at numbers 1 through 435, and we want 5 of them, right? So, you know, 1 to 435, we want to be able to use up like 4 digits, or not 4 digits, 3 digits, right? Because the biggest number we have has 3 digits. So we're starting here, and I'm going to look at just 3 numbers to get 3 digits, and that number 920 is not an option, right? It's not in the population. My numbers are 1 through 435, so we skip it, right? So then I just go work my way downward. The next, let me see if I can make this a little finer. The next 3 numbers would be here, 095. So that number is a number between 1 and 435, right? It's just the number 95. So I would list this down, number 95, and then work my way downward to the next 3. So we get 539. That's too big, right? That's bigger than 435. So work my way down again, 971. So again, that's too big, right? So then I go back up to the top, and I notice I'm going to start at this 4 here, because that column hasn't been used, right? But remember, I need to do 3 numbers, 3 digits, right? We're doing 3 digits, so that way we can possibly include all numbers between 1 and 435, right? Because if we counted less than 3 digits, then, you know, like if I only did 2 digits at a time, then you couldn't have a number bigger than 99, right? And there's zeros in here, right? So I can get really any number possible, right? So then the next one is 481. That's too big. So then I go work my way downward. 982, that's too big. The next 3, 677, that's still too big, right? So we got to keep going. That would be 593. And then the next 3 are 386, right? So that That one works. So we keep going. Let me just switch color here so you can maybe see this a little easier, right? Do these next three. We get 133. So that goes on my list. So I need 2 more. I need to keep going until I get 2 more. So I switch, go to the next row. We take the 3 numbers. So 456, that's too big. 632, that's too big. Next is 420. That works. Keep going. 480 is too big. 534 is too big. Lastly, we get 200. Right? So these are the 5 members, right? So you'd have to look at that list and see who matches up to who, right? So you would, look, you numbered, you had basically, imagine you have this list in alphabetical order by last name, right? And then you numbered 1 through 435. So you would just see who corresponds with number 95 and number 386 and so forth. And that's your simple random sample, right? So that's one way to do this using a table, right? So the next way I have here is using R, which is a statistical software that we're going to use in this class, right? So it says find a simple random sample of 5 members using R, right? So when we use technology to pick random numbers, something that we kind of need to be aware of is what's called a seed, right? So it turns out that when you use like a random number generator, it's what we call pseudo-random. It's not truly 100% random, but it's the best random that we can get, essentially, right? So a computer thinks, very logically. So a seed is kind of like a starting number in an equation that helps us pick these random numbers, right? So what I'm talking about is a seed, right? So if I wanted everyone in the class to get the same random numbers, then we would all use the same seed number, right? Now, you don't have to specify the seed number. You can, if you don't specify a seed number, it's essentially, the computer essentially picks your seed number. You just don't know what it is. So for example, it could use, when you type in the command or hit the button to give you the random numbers, if it automatically picks your seed, maybe it's picking it from the exact moment you hit it, the seconds number, right, in the time, right? That's one way. And a lot of times, to really be random, we want those seed values to be chosen by something that's random, like naturally occurring random, like in nature, right? So you don't have to necessarily be an expert in building that code, but just wanted to give you a little bit of backstory for that. Oops. All right, so I'm pulling over. Oops. Pulling over, I'm logged into Canvas. One thing I want to point out to you is if you go to modules and then the module R Statistical Software, I did give you a link for a textbook guide for R. So if you click on the R guidebook, that's by our textbook. This is organized by chapter, and it gives you some steps and advice on how to use R. So we're here in section 1.3. Notice there's a link here for obtaining a simple random sample, and it gives you some information, tells you the R codes, and gives you an example. and so forth. So this is a great resource to read over if you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and open R here. I'm going to make the text a little bigger. So I'm just going to go here into these settings, and I'm going to make this like size 12 font, right? Just make it a little bigger, easier to see. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell R to pick these random numbers. So the code for that is you type in sample, and then you open up parenthesis. The first number you type in is the minimum number that you want, right? So we numbered our numbers 1 to 435, right? So you would do 1 colon 435. So that's just telling R that we're thinking about the numbers 1 to 435. And then I hit comma, and then I type in size equals 5, and then comma, replace equals, and then false in all caps. Right? And that populates these random numbers, right? So the replace equals false, that is telling me that we're doing this without replacement, right? If I did replace equals true, that would be with replacement, right? So I think it's kind of understood that we're picking 5 members of the House of Representatives. We want them to be 5 unique members, right? So that's why we want to have without replacement here, right? We don't want to, if John Smith is a House of Representative member, we don't want him in this sample twice, right? We want 5 unique people, right? Essentially, it's kind of understood, right? So if I hit the pound button, this is common in coding language, that if you do that, you can type things, and basically that just tells the computer to ignore what you're about to type, right? So you don't get like an error message. So you can type like notes to yourself. So these are the members obtained from the simple random sample without specifying the seed, right? So then I could specify a seed now if I'd like. So if I set.seed, and then in parentheses I type a number, so let's do 24 as our seed number, and if I hit enter, now R knows that's the seed number that I want. So I could type in that very first line, the sample 1 to 435, because I'm going to want that again. But another nice thing in R is I can hit the up arrow. So if I hit the up arrow once, it goes to my last command. I can hit it again. It goes to that line in the code, and then I can hit up again and get that one, right? And that's exactly what I wanted to type. So then I can hit enter, and it will give me that simple random sample of 5 members. So one thing I'll notice is if you're following along with me and trying this on your own on R, when you typed in the first line, it's very likely, extremely likely, that you got different numbers than I did, right? It's possible we got the same numbers, right? But very, very, very unlikely, right? Very small chance that we would get the same values there. But the second time when we set the seed, you should have, you would get the same exact numbers that I did in the same order, right? Because again, setting that seed is like starting this initial value in this equation, and there's an equation built in that picks these random numbers for us, right? So oftentimes we use the seed in a classroom so we can get the same results, right? Like if I give you a problem to do, that way makes it a little easier for me to know if you did it right, because you should get the same answers that I did if we have a seed, right? So that's how to do this in R. So let me just write down our results here. So, you know, using a random seed, right? Essentially, we didn't specify a seed. What I had gotten were the numbers. So I don't remember what they were actually. Let me just let me move R to another monitor so I can easily grab that. All right, so the random seed, the first one, if you remember, was 179, comma, 297, comma, 85, comma, 78, comma, 139. All right, so that was my first simple random sample when I did not specify a seed, right? And again, when I see these numbers, this corresponds to a person, right? This is number 179 in my list, right? I list them in order 1, 2, 3, all the way down till I get to 179, and then, you know, whatever name is here, that's the person that I would pick, right? And so forth. So using seed equals 24, the sample that we got is the following: 231, comma, 403, comma, 72, comma, 215, comma, 418. All right, so then the last part of this is basically repeating the same thing, but I'm going to show you how to use another piece of software to get those numbers. And the software I'm going to show you is StatCrunch. So StatCrunch is built into my math lab. It's part of Pearson, right? So they have their own statistical software that's available to us for free. Right, so let me show you how to get to that. So you're going to go to My Lab and Mastering. You're going to click on Open My Lab and Mastering here. And then there's a link over here on the left that says StatCrunch, and you'll click on that. And then you can we can click Visit StatCrunch website, and it's going to say I have an error message signing in. Right, so you should not have this error, but I'm having some issues with my account. I think I've mentioned a few times, but I have a workaround for that for right now. So I'm going to sign in with another account, and I'll get that situated. Alright, so I'm just signing in here. Alright, so I need to go into a course. Alright, and like I've shown you, hit StatCrunch. We want to open the StatCrunch website, and I'm going to click Open StatCrunch here. Alright, so this is what StatCrunch looks like. To do the random numbers, you're going to go to Data, you're going to go to Simulate, and then you're going to go to Discrete Uniform and click on that. And then there are some items that we need to fill in. So the number of rows that you want, what you're going to fill in there is your capital N value, right? So we're going to put 435 in here. For column, or wait, excuse me, you don't want 435 there. The number of rows that you want is your little n, how many numbers we're picking in our sample, right? So sorry, we put 5, right? Thought that number that wasn't right. And then for column you put 1, and then for minimum is where you're going to put 1 to the 435, right? And then you could leave that the same. You don't have to worry about the column name. And then the seeding, you have 2 options. One is use dynamic seed. That, dynamic means changing, right? So essentially it's going to pick a seed for you, right? Not specifying a seed, right? So I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to hit compute. So I received the numbers 9, 24, 281, 251, 158, right? And then here, I'm going to go to data. So I just clicked in the second column here. I'm going to go to data, go to simulate, discrete uniform. So I'm going to go, the number of rows are going to be 5. Number of columns, we want 1. Minimum, we want 1. Maximum was 435. And then this time, I'm going to specify a seed. I'm going to use the seed 24. And I'm going to hit compute. Right, so I get some additional numbers here, right? So the first column, the 9, 24, 281, 251, 158, those are the numbers without specifying a seed, right? The next column, 107, so forth, those numbers are from using a seed 24, right? And notice, just because I use seed 24 in R and seed 24 in StatCrunch, I'm not getting the same results, right? And that's because, different software, they have different methods, different formulas for picking these random numbers, right? It's written into the code, right? But if you use seed 24 in StatCrunch, you should get the same list as me, right? That I got in StatCrunch. So if you're within the same software and you use the same seed number and everything else, enter in the same, that should give you the same list every time, right? So if I replicated, if I come over here and replicate this again, if I go data, simulate, discrete uniform, and I type in, we want 5 rows, 1 column, we go 1 to 435. And if I use a dynamic seed, hit compute, notice these numbers are different than the first time I did it, this first column, right? If I go here and hit data, simulate, discrete uniform, so we want 5 rows, 1 column, 1 to 435, and I hit use fixed seed, and I pick the number 24 again and hit compute. Notice these numbers are the same as the second column, right? So that gives me the same thing, right? All right, so let me just write these down. So using the random seed, or this program called it the dynamic seed, right, the changing seed. So we didn't specify a seed. The numbers I had gotten for that was 9, 24, 281, 251, 158. And then using seed equals 24, we're getting 107, 199, 110, 242, 165. All right, so that's how you do that with StatCrunch. All right, so now I have example 2. So example 2, we're going to use the table below that lists the 45 presidents of um, of the United States, right? So that's our frame, right? And notice there's already a number attached to each president, right? And these variables have a natural order, right? We have first president all the way up to the 45th president, right? Our current president. So we want to, part A, explain how to conduct a simple random sample. Right. So let's see. How do I want to word this? So using, oops, and that's, we want that to be like a black text. I don't. Using the numbers for each president in the table above, we want to use a random number table or technology to choose 8 random numbers between 1 and let's see, 45. Right, so we don't have to assign numbers because we already have those established. So then here's our random number table again. So we want to use this to pick a random sample of 8 presidents. So we're told to start in row 2, right? So that's here, and we want column 4, which is here. So we're starting with this number 4. So I'm picking numbers between 1 to 45, and I want 8 of them, right, in the sample. So 45 has 2 digits, right? So I want to pick 2 digits each time, right? So first we would have, 46, but that's too big, right? It's just a little bit too big, but still too big. So we keep working our way downward. 48, still too big. 77, too big. 46, too big. And then finally, we get one that works. I get 3. Right? So I can list that in my list. And we keep going. I think I'll switch to a different color. So I need to start back up here. So next number is 11. 11 works. Next number is 64, too big. 92, too big. 09, so 9, that works. So I can list 9. So we got 3, 11, 9. Next number is 53. That's too big. Next number, 97, too big. So next we keep going. So then I get 44. That works. Right, so we're looking for numbers between 1 and 45, right? So 44 works. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. We need 4 more. We got 59. That's too big. 06. That's 6. That works. Then we got 55 too big, 93 too big, and then 11. So we can list that. Oops, did not need to. All right, let me change color so it doesn't get confusing. So then next we use those 2 numbers. It's 81 is too big, 82 is too big, 77, 93, 86, all too big. And then next is 33. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need 1 more. All right, so I go to the next column. And we finally land on 45, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 45. right? So something to point out though is notice that 11 is here and 11 is showing up again here, right? So remember, we're assuming this to be without replacement, right? That's what makes sense, right? We're trying to pick a random sample of 8 presidents, so it seems to be that replacement doesn't make sense here. So what we should do is throw out this number 11. So I actually need to find one more, right? So it's good for you to see this because we need to throw out any duplicates that we find, right? We haven't had that yet, right? So we keep one, throw one away. So then we keep going, we get 63, and that's too big, and then lastly we end with 42, right? And we don't have a 42 yet. So that would be the simple random sample then. Right. So I'm going to show you how to do this using R again, right? So we'll say, the dynamic seed, and we'll just stick with, seed equals 24, right? So we'll do it both ways again, and then do the same thing for part D, but using StatCrunch. Right. And something to keep in mind that I've specified, but we want to make really clear that, like, remember when you see like this number 3, this corresponds with a person, right? So if I go up back to the president list, their third president was Jefferson. So that's listing his name, right? So this corresponds with Jefferson, right? And some of these might know by heart, right? Like 44 was Obama, and 45 is Donald Trump, right? So you're just getting that from the list. So each of these numbers corresponds to a person, right? We're just assigning them a number to be able to randomly pick those, right? I mean, theoretically, if you didn't want to do like a random number table or what we're doing, we could basically take like an index card, write down each president's name on an index card, so like 1 through 45, right? Like, write Washington on a card, Trump and Jefferson and Obama and, all of the presidents on a card, and then put it like in a bucket or something and shake it up real good and randomly pick 8 cards, right? That would be random as well, right? It's just a little more methodical, right? A little more mathematical. All right, so let me pull R over here. And actually what I want to do, well, no, this is fine. So what I was thinking is, since I specified a seed, maybe you might want to just start it over, but I'm just going to use the same seed, right? So I'm just going to hit the, well, actually, no, I do need to restart it because I first want to use like a dynamic seed, so I need R to not think the seed is 24 already, right? So I'm just going to close this and hit no, I don't want to save it, open up R again, and then I need to modify the text size here, right? So I had this on 12, right? So what I want to type was sample, then in parentheses we want to go from 1 to 45, and then we type size equals 8, and then comma, and then replace equals false in all caps, right? Hit enter. So that's my sample without specifying a seed. So then I can set the seed to be 24 as before. I'm going to hit the up arrow twice and run this again, and that's running it with the seed set at 24, right? So those are the two numbers, simple random samples that I was trying to get, right? So again, this first one is going to be different than what you did, but this should match if you're following along, this second one with the seed being the same. Right. So I'll just write this in really quick. So we had 17, 39, 10, 7, 11, 12, 23, 31. And then when using a seed of 24, we had 39, 19, 8, 23, 19, 8, 23, 34, 35, 29, 10. Right. So lastly, just use StatCrunch really quick. So I already got that pulled up. Just going to go to a new column here. I'll just I'll skip one just to give us some room so we know where we started. So we're going to go to data and then simulate and then discrete uniform. So the number of rows this time we want to do is 8, right? Because we want 8 numbers. We want these to be in one column. The numbers that we're picking are between 1 and 45. And I'm going to use the dynamic seed first, hit compute. So one thing you'll notice is that the number 13 is repeated, right? So StatCrunch, I can't specify to do without replacement. I can't do like replacement equals false, right? So what I need to do is get some additional numbers listed here, right? So let me go to data and I'll do simulate discrete uniform, and I don't know, I'll just type in like 16 rows, right? I only need 8, but I need to have some additional numbers because we have to skip over the repeats, right? So I want them in one column. We'll do 1 to 45 for the numbers. And then we're using dynamic seed, so I'll hit compute. Right, so I'm not seeing any repeated numbers yet. So I think this time maybe we didn't get repeated numbers. So I can just list the first 8, right? And then here we'll go to data, simulate discrete uniform. I'm going to do 16 rows again just to be safe. We'll have them in one column. And we're doing 1 to 45. So this is where I'm listing, or I'm using the seed 24, right? Like we've been using. Hit compute, and now I have those, right? So you just have to kind of remember what those are. I mean, you can type up here and name these if you'd like. So notice here, like there's 12 is repeated, so I'm going to ignore this second 12, right? So you could take a screenshot of this or pause this and write down what you think those would be, but I'll write it down here on our notes. So the dynamic seed would be 27, 30, 36, 29, 5, 20. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 2 more. And then 44 and 12. Right, so I don't see any repeats, right? So we got to pick just those first numbers. And this is a 9. Oops. Looks kind of bad. Right? That's a 4. So then using the C24, we would have 12, 21, but then I need to skip over that next 12, right? And then we'd have 26. So we got 12, 21, 26, 18. And then the next number is 26, so I need to skip over it because I already have that number. Then I'd have 31, comma, and then it's 29. Let's see, and then 33. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need one more. After 33 is 44. And we don't have any repeats, so we're good. All right. So that's all I have for this section. So make sure you let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.